What if your suffering is not caused by the world misbehaving, but by the expectations that you hold most dear? Could it be that everything you've been using the world for is the real reason that it hurts and disappoints you? Today we are contemplating lesson 25. I do not know what anything is for. This lesson highlights the ego's deepest habit, assigning personal purpose to everything. The perceptual error that this lesson aims to undo is this: you believe you know what things are for. You don't. Purpose is meaning, and the ego's version of purpose is always personal. And this means that it is always related to that false, separate self-image. The purpose may be to gain, to protect, to prove, to avoid, to control, or to secure identity. As you perceive the world through these lenses of purpose, the world itself becomes a tool of separation. You don't meet a person. When you encounter a person, you meet a role that you assigned to them. When you become aware of a moment, you don't enter a moment. You enter an agenda that your mind predetermined. And when you behold an object, you're not holding an object. You hold a function that is assigned by fear or desire. Even the simplest things become misused because the underlying goal is unconscious. Now, the Course is not saying that you don't know the function of the objects around you. You know the function of a phone, but what is it actually saying? It's saying that you don't know what you want that phone for. Do you want connection, control, reassurance, validation, defense, allegiance? The ego has a purpose for the way that you use that phone, and that hidden purpose determines whether the contact is loving and extending the thought system of oneness, or empty and extending the illusions of separation. Whether anything you do, think, or say is serving to amplify separation and multiply illusions that lead to misery, or extend love and end suffering, is determined by the underlying purpose. You cannot understand anything while the ego assigns its purpose to everything. Misuse, then, is inevitable when purpose is assumed instead of revealed. It is going right back to the meaning making that is writing the meaning of the separate self over all of creation, rather than witnessing the purpose and the meaning that the infinite creator already and always imbued every aspect of creation with. This lesson is liberation through humility. When you stop pretending you know the function of everything, you stop forcing life into your private plan. And in that openness, in that loosening of assigned purpose, goals begin to unify, not around ego outcomes, but around your true best interests, which have nothing to do with the illusory sense of a separate self. Meaning is not manufactured like the ego would like us to think. Meaning is received, but only when your purposes, the self-centered purposes that are centered around a non-existent, illusory self, are laid down. Before we go deeper, I want to invite you to let your body relax in this moment, to allow your breath to deepen, and for your presence to become full and lucid here and now. With your eyes open and a soft gaze taking in your surroundings, place the central idea in your mind. I do not know what anything is for. And allow this idea to be the window through which you look at the world that surrounds you. See if you can come into direct contact with the possibility that this statement is true. How would you look at this very moment through that lens? Stay with this for a few breaths as you look at your life and contemplate. I do not know what anything is for. And now, let's begin to unfold our contemplation into dialogue. And the very first question that I want to pose is this: what if the reason that we come to the edges in life where nothing seems to make sense is because we don't actually know what anything is for?
Maybe those moments aren't edges at all. Maybe they're just clearings. When you remove all the stories about purpose, what's left isn't meaninglessness, it's just is. That's where awareness lives, right? Without knowing what anything is for, there's space for something else to show up.
Yeah, almost like that childlike receptivity to creation.
Like walking into a room you've never seen before with no map. You just take it in. No expectations, no plans. Just present with whatever is. There's a kind of freedom in not needing to know the script.
But why does not knowing the purpose of things, let's say in this case, feel more like a threat to our sense of security rather than a relief?
I think we're conditioned to believe knowing the purpose is the same as control. If we don't know what something's for, it feels random, unpredictable, maybe dangerous. Like we're losing grip on something we thought was solid. But maybe that solid thing was just an illusion to begin with. The relief only comes when the story of needing control dissolves.
Right. So that sense of control makes our loosening of the grip of definition more scary rather than something peaceful.
Yeah, it's like your nervous system feels that unknown as danger. A lack of definition can register like instability, like the ground might give way. But that's just the ego protecting itself from not being the author. If we're not writing the story, the mind assumes it's losing its identity.
When this lesson says that purpose is meaning, what does that really mean?
I think it means purpose isn't some external thing to be discovered. It's whatever meaning we assign. If we don't know the purpose, there's no meaning. But if meaning depends on us, it also can't be assigned to anything outside of ourselves. So the whole chase for external meaning becomes meaningless.
So what happens when meaning is no longer assigned by the mind?
The experience changes. When meaning doesn't need to be made up, there's less weight. Everything just shows up as experience without the need to label it or box it in. Thoughts and sensations become clear, but they don't demand anything from you. More like watching clouds than planning to catch rain.
Yeah, so it's almost like that there is an intrinsic meaningfulness to creation, right? It's like we encounter creation, let's say an animal in nature, and we experience it really as it is. And the flip side, when we encounter it through the lens of the ego, we have a meaning assigned to it, a meaning through fear or desire. We want to capture it, or we want to run away from it, or we want to give it a definition in terms of our own private world and what place it has within it. What is all of that really about? That whole orchestration in the way that the mind, under the, let's say, hypnosis of the separate self, interacts with creation.
It's about identity, I think. The separate self needs to define everything to maintain the illusion of being separate. So meaning becomes control. If it's dangerous, I run away. If it's useful, I capture it. It's all about solidifying this idea that there's a me that needs to protect itself in a hostile world. But that whole orchestration takes energy, right? All that labeling, judging, planning. That's the cost of maintaining separation.
So what kind of meaning then appears when our personal purpose collapses?
It's when personal purpose dissolves, everything feels more alive, maybe. Like if you stopped writing the narrative for life, what would appear that wasn't pre-written? It's not that nothing happens, it's just that whatever unfolds isn't happening for anything. There's purpose, but it's more like the ocean has purpose to be itself, not to get somewhere or to protect something. The experience shifts from I'm having a life to life is happening.
Wow. Yeah, it's very beautifully discussed. What about, when we start to contemplate in the context of this lesson, how ego goals disguise themselves as my best interests? What is that dynamic about?
Ego goals feel urgent because they masquerade as self-preservation, safety, happiness, recognition, but they're just keeping the self we think we are alive. So they feel like our best interests, but are actually perpetuating this illusion of separation. Like when you convince yourself that job, relationship, or possession has to work out or you'll be ruined, that's not your interest. That's your identity story needing confirmation.
Zoom in a little bit more into that last example, because that sounds quite profound and very relatable.
Okay, so you believe your worth is tied to your job. To make that feel true, you invest energy in performing well, achieving promotions, securing financial stability. But beneath that is fear of losing identity. If you lost the job, who would you be? So performance isn't actually about the job itself. It's about defending against an unbearable truth that your worth isn't conditional on external things. The job becomes both the solution and the problem at the same time.
Wow. Well, let's go for one more example in the domain of relationship.
Sure. If someone believes their worth depends on being in a relationship, their partner essentially becomes a validation machine. Every argument, every moment of distance feels like a threat to survival, a threat to their identity. And they become hyper-focused on fixing the relationship, controlling their partner, proving their love worthiness. But all of that is just protecting the story that I am valuable if someone loves me. The real issue isn't the relationship problems, it's the identity story behind it.
So, what about those goals that we're exploring in the lesson that seem to conflict with each other? Why is it that these goals that are rooted in identity always compete rather than unify?
Because each identity goal demands exclusivity. Like if your goal is both financial security and creative fulfillment, they're constantly competing for your energy and attention. Financial security feels like the responsible choice. Creativity feels risky. But the story never lets both hold space simultaneously. The whole self-worth system requires choosing winners and losers. True unity would require seeing beyond the goals altogether.
So what does it really mean then to misuse the world in this way by assigning it personal goals?
It's like taking this magnificent creative expression, this spontaneous, boundless experience of being, and turning it into a tool to defend a story we made up. The world wasn't built for your personal goals. It's just happening, always moving, always changing. When you demand it deliver outcomes for your sense of self, it's like demanding the ocean fulfill your swimming lane desires instead of surrendering to the wave.
Wow, that's so profound. It's like this co-opting of creation and wanting to fit it into a particular box that's defined by what?
Exactly. Like taking wild beauty and trying to tame it into something safe and predictable. The tragedy is that in the process, we miss the real beauty, which is its infinite openness. When something isn't ours to take, control, or define for our own needs, maybe creation just unfolds, always has, and always will, outside of our needs.
But let's expand it then also to, how often do we treat people and situations and even spirituality then as tools for this self-maintenance, let's call it?
Almost constantly, I think. We turn people into mirrors reflecting back our idea of self. If they validate us, we like them. If they don't, we distance. And situations, if it gives us comfort and achievement, we move closer. If it's challenging, we recoil. Spirituality itself can get misused, becoming this way to fix ourselves or to arrive at enlightenment where we can escape all the bad parts of living instead of truly meeting reality moment by moment.
So even enlightenment and salvation and ascension, they can all become personal interests.
Exactly. If enlightenment becomes something you strive for or achieve, it's still egoic desire disguised as high spirituality. True freedom comes when there's no endpoint, nothing to get to or become. The ego is really clever at spiritualizing itself, isn't it? It takes lofty goals and makes them about itself all over again.
So then this idea of personal interest in itself is the very thing that blocks our understanding, we might say, or our receptivity to this higher intelligence that is living and breathing us and is the source of creation itself.
That's exactly it. The whole problem is that we can't see beyond the lens of my best interests. If you're trying to protect yourself or get somewhere, you miss what's happening in the present moment, which is everything. Trying to know what would be best for you isolates you from life instead of opening you to it.
So what is the other way?
I think it's about relaxing the effort of management and choosing to simply be with whatever's happening. Noticing the story of personal importance and letting it exist without fighting it, controlling it, or defining yourself by it. The moment you step back from fixing, there is an incredible spaciousness that appears.
I can sense this, as almost maybe like a loss of direction, because we're so used to navigating on these linear, predefined, let's say, lanes of purpose. Why does surrendering our goals feel like losing direction?
Because for so long we've equated control with purpose. We believe clarity means having a map to follow. But what if surrendering isn't losing direction? It's just trusting that there's already an intelligence guiding everything anyway. It's stepping out of the planning mind and simply moving with what naturally wants to happen, being present rather than steering. That feels disorienting because we've confused direction with destination.
So then withdrawing our goals would be the mechanism by which perception becomes unified?
It seems to be. When you stop using perception to confirm what you already believe, something can break open, like suddenly seeing everything for the first time. When we loosen our grip on this is how it should be, then our gaze isn't directed as much. And maybe the entire shift of perspective rests in releasing the compulsion for control.
It's so incredible to see that at the very core of our just life itself, even what we in media and movies and songs look at as beautiful and cherished and normalized social contexts, decisions, and ways of thinking and being are all rooted in this sense of control.
Yeah, it's pervasive. And it creates this strange paradox. We're constantly striving for deeper experiences, more meaningful connections, yet almost everything we do to get there is actually about defending a separate self that can't connect or feel deeply in the first place, like running from peace while looking for peace.
It's exactly what's happening at all times, isn't it?
It really is, isn't it? We're all searching for something we already are and fighting against experiencing what's already here. Such a beautifully heartbreaking paradox.
So what exactly are we afraid will happen if we admit that we don't know what anything is for?
I think the deepest fear is nothing would hold us together. That if we stop defending our stories, defining our relationships, believing in our identity-based meanings, we'd just dissolve. Not in a violent way, but in a peaceful, dissolving way. But what if dissolving isn't annihilation, but just returning to what we already are?
This sense of dissolving, I guess that's the very thing that the ego, ever since we believed in it, has had the function of preventing, right? And as much as we seek unity and oneness, and we even equate love to that in some poetic ways. Although, of course, we understand that in lived experience, even love, what human love is a bid for control. But this has been the very foundation of existence as long as we have known it through the ego lens.
Exactly. Love itself can become ego-driven, wanting someone to fulfill you, making them responsible for your happiness, trying to make the relationship fit your idea of what it should be. We think we're being loving, but it's all wrapped up in wanting our experience to change. So even what we deem pure gets co-opted by the desire for something to happen.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. So let's then open this lens and say, if everything is for our best interests, right? At the level of creation, at the level of the infinite creator expressing itself as all that is for our best interests, but not necessarily for our ego's interests, then what kind of seeing becomes possible when we open ourselves to that lens?
Everything becomes available, no longer needing to filter life through the story of me. There's this directness. Not that experience changes, pain still happens, things still get broken, but those experiences aren't stories about your lack or inadequacy. They are just what happens. When nothing needs to work out for you, you get to really witness life instead of being constantly at war with it.
So I want to, as we come to the close of this conversation, I want to ask you if you could maybe offer us this, kind of like a guided experience to show us what it really is like to withdraw our goals from the world, to withdraw the purpose that we have written for everything. Could you guide us through that in a way that we can experience it directly?
Okay, let's take a breath. I invite you to close your eyes if you're comfortable, or just soften your gaze. No need to make this special. Just settle into where you are. Allow your breath to be natural, just breathing in and out without changing anything about it. Now bring to mind something you're working toward, something important to you. Notice how that goal feels in your body. Perhaps tension, excitement, maybe a sense of effort. Just observe it without trying to change it. Notice any story or feeling that comes up in relation to achieving or not achieving it. Recognize the meaning you've given to it, and then gently allow that meaning to fall away. Just release any claim on how things should be. Imagine what would happen if the goal simply wasn't assigned such importance. No desperate need for it to work out, just is. Feel the space that creates just that spaciousness of release. Keep breathing. There's no right or wrong way to feel in this moment. Everything already is what it needs to be. Just keep resting here in the sense of opening, and when you're ready, you can open your eyes gently. Take a moment to notice the present moment, noticing the relief or any sensations. Welcome back to the present moment.
The core of it, again, it seems like we're coming back to simply the practice of consciously noticing what is actually happening to our energy, to our body, when we engage through the lens of the separate self. And as we notice that, just again, noticing, being aware of the contrast between that, and what it would be like to simply drop that to relax it, to let it fall without holding on to it. Would you say that that's accurate, or is there more?
That's exactly it. And maybe more than just noticing, recognizing it's already happening. Like, you don't have to stop engaging with goals or passions. You just have to notice the story underneath. The story that if you don't get what you want, something's wrong with you. When you realize it's not about the want, but the story around the want, everything shifts. It's not what you do, but how you relate to what you do.
And as we come to the close of this session, I want to invite you as the listener to, once more, let all of the concepts and words simply fall away. Fall away, not in a way that you need to push them or do anything, but simply stop holding on, remembering, reanimating, and instead opening to what is already here. This spacious, open presence, the stillness, the pulse of aliveness in your body. And now, let us go into the silence.